Window, the much anticipated movie debuting on Netflix on May 14th, 2021. And I'm going to get right into it. All-star cast, very good trailer, lots of twists and turns. When you see the trailer and go see it, you'll want to see this movie. Now, I'm going to warn you, I'm going to put some spoilers in here only to explain my review of the movie. I'm going to try and limit the spoilers in case you want to see this movie, but you may not want to after you see my review. So warning you now, if you're intending to see this movie and you want to do it with fresh eyes, go and watch it and stop my review now. If you want to see my review, continue on. So let's get into what is The Woman in the Window. So it's based on a novel, a mystery novel by A.J.Finn, and it was released a few years ago, and it's being adapted now for the, I should say, the small screen, not the big screen. Though it does look like it could be a big screen movie. Has an all-star cast. Let's get into this. So what we have here is the lead in this is Amy Adams, who's a spectacular actress. As a matter of fact, all these actors and actresses I'm going to talk about are really good actors and actresses in all the other movies. So Amy Adams is the lead character in this movie, and she plays Dr. Anna Fox. Okay, so she's a character that she suffers from agoraphobia, and she's in her New York brownstone townhouse, and she can't leave. And you'll find out through the movie that a lot of it's due to a psychological breakdown, due to a tragedy she experienced. And I won't get too much into that because that is a spoiler. She is a child psychologist, you find out. So she lives in this brownstone apartment condo, whatever it is. And in the movie, it looks like a massive mansion the way it's filmed. But in fact, it's like a townhouse. In any event, she has a roommate, or I should say a tenant who lives downstairs, and his name's David. He's portrayed by actor Wyatt Russell. And you've probably wondering, where have I heard that name? Well, if you just saw Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he was the new Captain America they introduced in the series. He's also Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn's son. So he plays the tenant who lives downstairs. And he's got kind of a questionable past, and I won't get too much into that. Let's get into the other characters. Again, there's a whole slew of characters here. You have a voiceover from somebody from her past, and I won't get into too much on that either. And right away, I recognize the voice as none other than Anthony Mackie, a fellow Falcon and Winter Soldier star, who's currently going to be the new Captain America, and he was Falcon in the Marvel series. Great actor, and he's more of a voiceover in this. If that's confusing, well, I don't want to spoil it. In any event, then we've got other characters. We've got Julianne Moore. I mean, Julianne Moore is in this movie. She plays a character by the name of Jane. We have Gary Oldman, who plays Alistair Russell, who lives directly across the street in another brownstone-type townhouse. We also have Jennifer Jason Leigh, that we haven't seen in so many years. She's a big 80s actress, portraying another Jane. So, again, we can get into that later. So you got quite a good cast here to start with. Trailer looks interesting. I watched the movie last night, and yeah, there's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is it was free. I mean, I do pay for Netflix, so I guess in a way it wasn't free, but I didn't have to stream it and pay a rental charge. That's the good news. The bad news was it's not a very good movie at all, and I'll get right into why I think it's a bad movie without trying to spoil it too much if you still want to go and see this. So the problem with this movie is there's a couple what we call MacGuffins that are thrown into this movie, as well as some predictable scenes, but they don't know whether they're doing a suspenseful mystery film or an art house film. And what I'll explain by that is there's some scenes in this movie where you're obviously seeing things through Dr. Anna Fox's eyes, which is portrayed by Amy Adams, in the fact that you see these weird illusions and stuff. It doesn't help the movie. It makes it a kind of a hot mess as far as I'm concerned. So it's kind of an art house movie that way. But on the other hand, they're making this a suspenseful, nail-biter, edge-of-your-seat movie. So you're mixing those two things in. I didn't think it did really well. I mean, I guess they're trying to make it sort of like the classic The Shining, where there's some art house stuff in there that you saw from Jack Nicholson's perspective. But that was a truly epic movie. So anyways, let's get right into this. The other thing is there's a couple scenes in this movie where I'll throw this out here. It's a bit of a spoiler, but not really. She's got a big rooftop window that looks into her suite there, and her tenant David says, "Oh boy, I got to go up there and clean the mold. I mean, this glass is ready to break." And when you hear that, you're like, okay, obviously this is being set up for another part of the movie later on where the glass is going to break. I'll just leave it like that. So I knew that was coming. And again, that's very predictable. Another thing too is in other movies and TV series have fallen into this pitfall too, where they don't do proper research on the police. You have the typical episodic NYPD detectives. She does call the police at one point in this movie. Instead of patrol members from NYPD that should be showing up here, essentially they're full-on detectives, which is fine, I guess. It's a male and a female detective. But every time she runs into issues now with the police, those two show up, which begs you to ask, is there not anybody else in the NYPD that can respond to this call other than these detectives? I'm sure have better things to do. And again, they're the only police you see in the entire movie, which is totally unrealistic. So that part, again, that falls into poor screenwriting, lazy screenwriting in this movie. Let me just get into it. So the folks across the street, and this is shown in the trailer, is Alistair Russell, again, portrayed by Gary Oldman. He's living there with his wife, which I won't kind of spoil here, named Jane. There's two different actresses that may be Jane. And then he lives with his teenage son, Ethan Russell, portrayed by Fred Hischinger. So the movie's dark. I'll say that much right now. It's depressing. There's not really any positive things here. And you start to feel for the teenage character, the young boy there, who's having some mental health problems of himself. Now, she's a child psychologist. That's her previous occupation. So they build a connection there. And I really thought, okay, well, this could go somewhere. I see that she's trying to help him out. But I'll just say this. The movie goes completely dark in the final act. And yeah, you don't feel for that. Let's just put it this way. You don't feel for that kid anymore. But there's just a violent ending that I really don't think needed to be done. And I find in movies too, they find the only way to deal with a bad guy in the final act of the movie is by giving them a dramatic death. Instead of maybe just apprehending them, have the police put them in custody like a normal thing would be. They go and they kill off these characters, and I'm guilty of that. I've got guilty movies that I love where the bad guys die, like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon. I love those movies, but in this type of suspenseful movie that they're trying to set the bar above, and again, it's apparently a really well written novel this is based on. I just found it was a cheap ending, and again, there's just no happy moments in this movie whatsoever. Another disturbing fact in this is a major protagonist, a good guy in this movie, a detective, portrayed by Brian Tyree Henry, portrays Detective Little. He's, again, one of the main detectives in this movie. Comes across some information that somebody may harm themselves, but, trying to come off like a good guy, decides that, you know what, I'll pretend I didn't see that. And it's kind of supposed to be like hey, you're a cool detective, you're going to let this go. Well, I can assure you, a police officer coming across information that somebody's going to self-harm themselves and fails to do anything, that's not cool. I don't know if they thought that would be a cool moment in the final act. I didn't think it was. So, all in all, it's there is some twists and turns. I'll give them that. But a lot of this you see coming. And they're trying to make it like an old Alfred Hitchcock movie, I feel, with a classic Vertigo, for example, or even Psycho, where they're doing all these cool shots and this really cool music, but it just doesn't fit. I'll be honest, I got bored halfway through the movie. Started looking at my phone, which I shouldn't be doing when I'm watching a movie. And then, the final act, again, was so predictable. They explain the tragedy that happens to Dr. Anna Fox. And it's brutal. I mean, it is a tragedy, don't get me wrong. But again, this movie is so negative that you really don't feel for anybody in this movie. I guess I should get into the premise real quick here. Basically, the premise is she's stuck in her townhouse. She looks out her window and she sees, and this is in the trailer, so it's no spoiler. She sees what she believes to be a domestic violence murder. So she calls the police. The woman she believes was murdered, in fact, may or may not exist. I'll leave it like that. And Gary Oldman, who's the suspect, Alistair Russell, who may have killed his wife, comes over with his real wife, portrayed by Jennifer Jason Leigh, with the police, saying that she's obviously got some mental health issues here. That's what the premise is. And then, is she crazy? Is she not crazy? That part could be really interesting. But again, they just make this such a dark and depressing movie that by the end, you just want it to end. And I'm sorry, but I had high hopes going this movie. I saw the trailer, and I don't think the studios were trying to manipulate anybody like they've done in other movies by making the movie something that's not. I just think that they missed a few key elements in this movie. They could have made it a little more realistic, maybe a little more upbeat, and maybe the filming could have been a little more bright. Sure, she can't leave her townhouse. That is obviously a real psychological condition. But let's portray it in a positive light too. Let's not just make it dark, 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 where there's pills and alcohol and stuff like that. I don't know. It didn't work for me. And again, this is A-star cast here. I mean, I don't blame the actors by any means. I think they all did what they could. They did a great job in their roles. Another problem I have with this movie, and I should have mentioned it, was the tenant downstairs, David. There's really no connection between him and Amy Adams, which is fine because they're landlord-tenant. But she keeps sneaking into his place, and he keeps walking upstairs. It's just, really bizarre. And they don't know anything about each other. I found that to be very strange, especially with a lady who's suffering from a psychological condition. I don't think she'd want some stranger just walking upstairs all the time and, making himself at home. And then she's sneaking down into his room and looking around at things. There's a couple subplots with that character too that I thought was messy. Again, I'm trying not to spoil this movie. At the end of the day, I didn't enjoy the movie. It could have been better, yes. I've seen the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes now after I saw the movie, and boy, it's not very pleasant. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do I give this movie? I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. It wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen by any means, but it's not a very good movie either. I give it 4 because they were trying to be suspenseful. They're trying to have these twists and turns, and I'll give them credit. They did have some good twists and turns in this, but I think the depressing tone of the movie and some unrealistic tidbits they threw in there, for me anyways, that I've already mentioned in the review, just kind of diminished what this movie could have been. Again, I was really excited. We're all stuck at home here in Canada, so when you get a new blockbuster movie on a streaming service like Netflix, you look forward to it. So unfortunately, I was disappointed. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Tell me what you thought of this movie in the comments below. Like it. And yeah, subscribe to my channel. See you later.